Hey bookworms! Our backs tell stories no books have the spine to carry. I'm Beth.
I'm Tori.
And we are the Lit
Chicks.
This episode is super late, but we're finally wrapping up December and February with our second set of poets, Kahlil, Gibran, and Rupi Kaur. Like our last duo, our contemporary poet, Rupi, was greatly inspired by the works of Kahlil, specifically his book of poetic essays, The Prophet.
So starting off with Rupi Kaur was born October 4th, 1992, and she's an Indian-born Canadian.
I didn't realize
poet.
She was our age.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. No.
It's inspiring. She is an Indian-born Canadian poet, writer, self-illustrator, and performer. She actually self-illustrated both of her collections of poetry. When she was 5, her mom handed her a paintbrush and said, "Draw your heart out." So, in a way, Rupi views her life as an exploration of the artistic journey.
I can respect that.
So, and we can see that with her collections. Her debut book was a collection of prose and poetry, which was titled Milk and Honey, which everybody was talking about. Yeah. And it was published in 2014. And it sold over 2.5 million copies, which is huge for a poet.
For a poetry book, yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa.
She spent more than a year on the New York Times bestseller list, and now she has a second book as well called The Sun and Her Flowers, which was published in 2017. And the 2 poems I picked are from that one. People have, I don't want to say torn, because that's kind of a harsh word, they have dissected Milk and Honey, like down to the spine of the book.
Time to move on to something new.
Yeah. So throughout high school, Kaur shared her writing anonymously. She was Adnan.
Love that.
In 2013, she began sharing her work under her own name on Tumblr.
Whoa.
Woo! Which we understand, because I don't have a Tumblr anymore, but completely understand. She took her writing to Instagram in 2014, which I forgot that Instagram was around in 2014. It
was baby Instagram. It wasn't what we know now.
Yeah, no. And she began adding simple illustrations to her Instagram post.
With the poems attached?
Yes, yeah. Okay. She gained mainstream popularity.
That way?
Yeah, that way. And that's quite a feat for a poet, especially now, because, nobody...
I mean, I can't think of any, true mainstream poets. There's that one guy who I think he's actually on Instagram, too. For the life of me, I can't remember what his name is, but he will just post just a picture of the text, and his poems are really short. I mean, sometimes even just one line. Atticus? Is his name Atticus? I don't know. I'm not sure. But he's like that. He's an Instagram poet.
Yeah.
So she probably started something like that,
Oh, yeah, that's what yeah. Rupi is known as a multicultural feminist. She's an icon for that. Mm-hmm. So, for anybody that doesn't know, multicultural feminism extends further into the notion that women are often separated and treated as different values and significance based on class, sexuality, and race. Mm-hmm. And she's a woman, so that's the first thing. She is Indian-born, and I don't know... But a
Canadian citizen?
She immigrated with her parents.
Right.
So, and feminism can extend to a small audience, so the fact that she grew so big past being a feminist icon is now her names are on the books. Unfortunately, her success has come with a lot of backlash, and my next thought is just personal opinion. It's because she is a woman of color, and she's popular for poetry, which has been predominantly
a white male thing.
White male school of thought. Yeah. And anybody that has anything to say negative about her, some of them are like, why are you saying this? Which, I know some people that don't care for her poetry, which is fine, but these people are tearing her apart at her roots, I guess, instead of actually looking at her poetry.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that is sort of that whole sad puppies thing that's happening with the science fiction community, and I really talk about this a lot in what I've written for our next episode. But the Sad Puppies, A Brief History, is a group of white male science fiction fantasy writers who feel that writers of color are getting too much recognition simply because they're a minority and not because of the stuff they're writing actually being good. And I mean, there's this whole can of worms with that tune in next week to find out more about that. But it's really across the board with these writers. They're upset that it's no longer, or it's starting to no longer be a white male dominated.
And it makes them mad.
And it makes them mad.
So.
But they can suck it.
So, moving on from that rant, Kaur writes about love, sex, rejection, and relationships, which I think might be another reason that men are kind of like...
Much because she's talking about sex.
Yeah. But she puts it all out there on social media, which everybody puts everything out there on social media.
Yes.
She also deals with darker material. She talks about abuse. She talks about beauty standards in our society, and racism is a big one.
Well, that's really, great that she is using her platform that she's built to discuss these issues publicly. That's really respectable.
Yeah. She's gotten, besides the backlash, like a lot of people, she was Instagram famous, and people don't like to admit that people can be famous that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a societal, cultural thing that hasn't really caught up to the technology yet. So,
they think that she went gimme, gimme, and everybody gave her, but
that's not how it works.
No, she worked her butt off for where she is now. So going into the technicalities of her poetry and prose, she writes mostly in lowercase letters, which she gets from the Gurmukhi script. I am so sorry if I'm butchering that word, which is similar to what I think Kahlil, how Lebanese wrote their everything in general was all lowercase. In their language, it was all lowercase.
So their language has the lowercase letters?
Okay. Yeah. She only uses periods as a form of punctuation. She really doesn't have any other punctuation in her poetry or prose, which I think is interesting. Yeah. She writes it in order to, honor her culture, the Indian culture, right? Not the Canadian culture, which I'm not saying anything bad against that. She said that she enjoys the equality of the letters, which
that's cool. Okay.
Yeah, and that style reflects her worldview. Obviously,
she puts so much thought.
It's
into
incredible.
Her writing. That is, my mind is.
Her written work is meant to be an experience that is easier for the reader to follow, with simple drawings that help elevate her words. So with just like a simple illustration, even if somebody doesn't completely understand,
they can kind of get it
off the context of the picture.
I find that does really help someone who isn't as familiar with poetry, to either hear someone read it, be it the author or whoever, or see an illustration that goes along with it. I think that it gives the reader a little bit more context.
Yeah, one of the poems I have, I can read it to you, and maybe I won't show you the picture until afterwards, so maybe you can tell me what you think about it before and after.
Fun.
Okay. Anyway, moving on.
Yes.
Kaur posted a series of photographs on Instagram depicting scenes of a woman's menstrual cycle, and people blew up about it. This was her. It was her final project for her undergraduate studies. And it was consisting of 6 photos, and it was titled The Period. And
she only uses periods.
Yeah. It depicted herself with menstrual blood stains on her clothing and bed sheets. She wrote, "I see the way many communities avoid the menstruating women. In some societies, a woman is not allowed out of her home on her period even to go to school, or she isn't allowed to visit her religious place of worship because she's considered dirty." And that's still a thing.
Yes.
By highlighting these distinct moments of the cycle that women go through, I will be forcing viewers to look and tackle their fears head on. Which, it's probably not, I don't want to say, I think she's directing this more at men than necessarily women, but I'm sure there were some women that were like, oh my goodness, why are you showing this? Even though everybody knows that women have periods unless they medically, can't, or they get their baby makers taken out, That's what keeps you from bleeding. She said that her photos were actually removed by Instagram for not complying with the site's term of service.
Yeah, see, that's where it gets kind of murky.
Yeah, she said, "Thank you, Instagram, for providing me with the exact response my work was created to critique."
I would say so.
And then Instagram came back and was like, "We're sorry, whatever, blah, blah, blah."
Too little, too late, Instagram. Although I will say that they have been getting better with stuff like that, and like breastfeeding too. I've noticed that being more commonplace, which should have been the case all along. However, it wasn't, but now it's starting to be that way, so that's good.
So, finishing up on Rupi herself, she was in an interview and she was asked, "Are there any experiences you've had that you felt you needed to write about?" And she says, "I want to write about women. I want to write about love, the experience of loss, beauty, sexuality, all the things that make you, you, and make me, me. I want to show the different dynamics of a woman. We're not simple. We are complex, and we feel and experience many different things. We are many different things at once, and so I want to showcase that."
I can get behind that. I really can get behind that. That's great.
Yes. Going into my first poem that I picked. I picked How We Make Up, which is about a couple that we see fighting in the beginning, and eventually by the end of it, they have sex and everything's forgiven.
Okay.
Which is a very blatant way to put it. But it's a free verse poem. There's not many line breaks. It's just like, it's almost like stream of consciousness in a interesting way. There's no rhyme, but plenty of reason. She's known for her Rupi is known for her frankness, and I think I see it in the short lines in this poem specifically. 42. It's a long poem too. It's I
was about to say 42 lines is one part of it, right?
Yeah,
so it's longer than that.
Yeah. 42 lines are dedicated to how this couple fights over small things, which are actually bearing a real reason to fight. This couple doesn't want to break up, I guess, and maybe she is with him because they're relying on each other, but it's polluted. It's a toxic relationship. Yeah. The narrator in this, which I'm assuming is Rupi, or she doesn't say
the
it's
woman.
The woman, yeah. She states that they fight more than they used to and irritated by the small things that the other person does, which everybody goes through that in relationships, especially when you live with a person. They want the narrator wants to know why they're falling apart, but he or she. It may not be a he, but
the other.
May not be a she. Sorry, not sure. The narrator wants to know why they are falling apart, but they are too afraid to ask.
Right.
Which a lot of people
that wound
that happen to. Yeah. So now I would like to take a second to mention that humans are complicated, which we will see in this poem. Stubborn and hard-headed for sure. Just in general, it takes a lot for somebody to get to the root of the issue. Yeah. People want to skirt around what's going on.
It's that fear.
Yeah, fear. And sometimes yelling and fighting is the only way that some people know how to get their feelings across, and I think that also, that counts for how people are brought up in society.
Yeah, when you're not able or taught to process your emotions, the more difficult emotions, in a healthy way, it tends to come out in bursts where you're not really able to understand what it is that you're feeling, so it just kind of is thrown out at the person who's hurting you, and I did that in quotes, but you're hurting yourself.
Yeah. So disagreements over small things on a normal, sometimes daily basis is okay. And one of the few lines from the poem, people disagree over the small things on a normal, sometimes daily basis, which is okay if you're not letting it sit and build.
You just gotta talk about it.
Yeah, talk about it
through the disagreement.
And we've been arguing more than we ought to about things neither of us remember or care about, because that's how we avoid the bigger questions. Extreme hurtful arguing is detrimental to relationships, and that's any relationships. She goes on to say in this poem, taking hits at the most vulnerable parts of one another we're like fingers on thorns, honey. We know exactly where it hurts.
Oh.
Yeah. Because we're smart, too, and we know how to screw with somebody. Mm-hmm. And if, like you said, if you're hurting me, I'm going to hurt you type thing. People don't want to let that go.
Well, it's like a defense.
Yeah.
And some people don't even really realize that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
When they lash out.
We see that the speaker could be any person that's gone through a turbulent relationship with someone they thought they loved. Mm-hmm. And all the frustrations and hurt that come up, there doesn't seem to be any other way out except for taking it and then giving it back in a way, at least with this poem, like the hate and the, And then in the poem, the narrator ends up blaming themselves for what's going on.
Yikes.
But they never ask the important questions. They just think it's all their fault. Instead of asking why, we don't say I love you to one another as often as we used to. I know. Your excuses make all the sense in the world, and I get a little carried away for no good reason and eventually begin crying, but what else do you expect, baby? I love you so much. I'm sorry. I thought you were lying. So the narrator ends up putting it on herself at the end of this poem. And even though it's possible that the person and their significant other is actually cheating on them and not coming home, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going on, I guess they can't see their way out of this situation. And then after that, where she's like, I'm sorry, I thought you were lying, it starts to go into a climax. It's a long poem, too.
I was about to say, it sounds like they cover quite a bit.
Yeah. And the climax is metaphorical and physical.
Oh!
Yeah.
Biological.
Because no matter how bad it both gets, we know you still want to nail me to the ground, which can be taken more than one way. So at this point, passion and lust has been thrown into the mix. Mm-hmm. There's hate and passion and all that stuff. Makeup sex is basically what this poem's about. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, it's not healthy, but people do it all the time. But I don't know. It's really one of those things that's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it depends on the situation, but the way that this context makes it sound is that instead of, again, dealing with the issue, they're just covering it up with physical stuff.
Yeah. So at this moment, nothing else matters except them screaming at each other with their bodies, is basically how. Kiss me like I am the center point of gravity, and you are falling into me like my soul is the focal point of yours. Then there's images of neighbors standing outside and looking through the window because they hear screaming. Fire trucks show up, which is all, it's not necessarily, that's not physically happening, maybe. But there's screaming going on, but then they're having sex, and then all of a sudden everything is forgotten. This couple is obviously in trouble, but they still want to shut everything else out when it's just the two of them. At this point, we see that the line between love and hate is being walked, on very thin ice. So another few lines. Sweet baby, this is how we pull language out of one another, the flick of our tongues. This is how we have the conversation. This is how we make up. And that's how the poem ends. Yeah, and she adds periods at certain points where it's like, because she says this, period, is how we make up.
Mm-hmm. That emphasis.
Yeah. I believe that sex to this couple in particular are the only thing that they see as concrete in their relationship. Because it comes back.
It's tangible.
Yeah. And love, too, and it can show itself in tangible ways, but love, the emotion itself.
It's spiritual.
Yeah.
It's not, it doesn't exist.
And some people
in this plane.
They only see they only believe what they see type thing.
Right.
So I think Rupi writing this one, she's focusing on love and loss and abuse. I think in some
this
form.
is absolutely an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
You can already, you just know this couple for one poem and, it's long, but you can still see the cycle that's been going on for the entirety of the relationship.
Yeah.
In just this little snapshot.
Yeah. Something's bothering her. She wants to ask him, but instead she's like, why didn't you do the dishes? Mm-hmm. And then then it escalates into, why didn't you come home, or where have you been? And then he manipulates in a way that makes her feel like she is the one that did something wrong. Mm-hmm. And then he makes a move on her, and she's like, oh, he still loves me. Mm-hmm. We're going to have sex. And that's how they make up.
Some people that don't understand what love actually is.
Yeah. Okay. So my next one is, this poem actually doesn't have a name. And this is the one I want to do the experiment with you. And it's short. Like, a lot of her poems are short. This one in particular is really short. It is when I stopped searching for home within others and lifted the foundations of home within myself, I found there were no roots more intimate than those between a mind and body that have decided to be whole.
Well, to me, it sounds like self-discovery and growth within yourself instead of trying to seek it from anyone else or anything else.
Yes. Okay. And if you look at the phone, like the picture, it's a lady sitting in, it looks like grass, but she's got
the vines.
Vines and
and she almost looks like she's meditating, which is a great way. It's a great path to
which I'm sure that in her culture that meditating is.
Well, yeah, it's an Indian
key,
thing.
So,
and her hair is vines too.
Yeah. So, yeah, she's growing.
Yeah.
Most people spend their lives attempting to obtain happiness.
Yeah. But again, they're trying to obtain it. They're not trying to manifest it.
And sometimes that can be sometimes that's finding a place to call home, mm-hmm. which, some people can wander forever, in quotes.
Well, they say home is where the heart is.
Yeah. Some may think of it as a house, others church. Mm-hmm. People find their home in church. Or sometimes they find it in another person, a spouse or a community. The answer really lies in yourself, which is what you said. I mean, she became who she is because she stopped trying to make others happy.
Yes.
And she decided to make herself happy. Which now people want to make everybody else happy all the time.
Oh, everyone is like people pleaser these days.
Yeah, sheeple.
Well, I don't know if that's quite the sheeple thing, but yeah.
Yeah. But basically Rupi is saying, go against the norm, mm-hmm. dig deeper into yourself.
Sure.
Love and treasure yourself, which a lot of people don't. Yeah. Self-love is a hard thing to come by. Mm-hmm. Even though they try to find it in other people. You can't find self-love in other people. It's just not how it's going to work.
You're going to be constantly chasing this fantasy. If you're mm-hmm. trying to find answers for yourself anywhere other than within yourself.
Yeah. And I think this poem ties back into how we make up, because sex is just a fleeting notion. Mm-hmm. And that person is giving into someone who may not love you mm-hmm. like you should love yourself. Mm-hmm. Because you don't see another way of making things better because you're stuck in this routine.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you let it go and you find yourself, which, it's cliche to say go find yourself, but people really need to do it.
Yeah.
You would be happier. You wouldn't feel like a huge burden is on your shoulders constantly, which I also think it's cool in this photo. She's like
she's got her arms out.
Yeah, she's not like crossed or, anything like mm-hmm. that. She's just like she's open. Yeah.
And I mean, not gonna lie, it's hard in our culture as it is with millennials and the constant pressure that everyone is getting on social media. And, mm-hmm. I know everyone talks about it, but I still feel like there aren't enough results of people breaking out of that. I mean, and it's hard to even think, I know I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but it's relevant, I promise. It's hard to break out of that cycle when you're in it every single day. So like with your poem on how we make up, they're never going to escape that toxic loop that they're stuck in mm-hmm. unless they individually take the time to figure out what is going on really deep down, individual, separate, so they can come together and talk about it as individuals.
I mean, we see people on social media that are like,
you know, perfect
or
the highlight reels,
or they say that they love themselves, or they, you know, sure. I'm awesome, you know, I love myself, but they're lying.
Well, it's a mask. There's one makeup artist that I really like, and she only just recently started posting like natural pictures of her body, and she's a curvy lady, which is a shock to me because every single picture I have ever seen of her looks like she is a size 2, maybe 4, but it was only like a month or so-ish where she came out and said, I am going to stop photoshopping my body because I'm miserable. And I mean, obviously you would never know looking at her pictures from the past because they're either headshots or photoshopped.
Facetune, man. People love Facetune, which, you know, it's fun to see you know, do
your
stuff.
Perfect version of yourself.
But it's going to drive you crazy.
Because
nobody's perfect.
Nobody's perfect, and you're never going to actually be able to attain that falsehood of perfection. It's not real. Like, if you look at these images of yourself, and that's something that this artist said, was that she was looking at all of these images of herself and wondering why she didn't look like that, because there's a picture of her, she should look like that, but then she'd have to remind herself, wait, I never looked like that.
Yeah. That's insane.
So, yeah. But it's good that people like Rupi are bringing stuff like this to attention on such a wide scale. Yeah. Because, you know, there is something about poetry that whenever it resonates with you, I mean, it can cut deep. Yeah. So having these writers give people this tool to use and look within themselves to really find their own ways out, I think is really good. And I can definitely see where she gets her inspiration from Gibran. Like, whenever I get into my poems, you'll really see what I mean. But his whole mantra is just, you know, seeping out of those poems. So that's going to be fun to talk about.
Yeah. Rupi wants people to realize that they're valuable. And by doing that, you know, showing that she wants us to see that we're valuable, that our time is valuable, our skills, our opinions, our ideas, everything is valuable if you put your mind, body, and soul into it. Yes. You don't want half-baked ideas, or false ideas either.
Yes. Because you're only really hurting yourself.
Yeah.
By not giving it your all.
Yeah. I think she's trying to say that we need to let others know that we're worth it by being good to ourselves.
Yeah, you are.
So, like, when people say
advocate.
me day, and people are like, whatever. We all need a me day. Yes. We all need to love yourself. Yeah, we all need to love ourselves before anyone else.
Yes. I actually think that that's going to be a good segue into
perfect
Gibran.
Okay.
All right. So Kahlil Gibran was born on January 6th, 1883, and behind Shakespeare and Lauja, Gibran is the third best-selling poet of all time. He was born in the Ottoman Empire, which obviously does not exist anymore. Yeah. And that is modern-day Lebanon. So he immigrated with his family to the U.S. as a young man, and it was here in, I believe he was in New York, where he began his literary career, writing in both English and Arabic.
I think that's interesting that him and Rupi both immigrated.
Both
yeah, I didn't realize that.
Yep. And he definitely keeps his roots.
Yeah.
And you can see that in his writing. But his work was viewed as rebellious from both a literary and political standpoint in Lebanon and the Arabic world. He wrote in a romantic style that was not really common amongst other Arabic writers during this time. However, this is what carved out his spot as a literary hero in Lebanon to this day. The Prophet, which is what we're going to cover, is his most well-known work in the English-speaking world. It was written in 1923, and it is a collection of poetic fables that has been translated into over, and now there are conflicting sources on this. Some say 40 to 50, and some say like hundreds of languages. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My grandfather's read this. He actually keeps this book in his office.
Now, that's... Yeah. I'm going to get into that because you'll see.
Yeah.
Okay. So this book sold very well in the 1930s and then again in the 1960s. And both of these times were there were major cultural shifts going on in America. Mm-hmm. So you can kind of see that trend.
Did you say the 60s?
Yeah, the 60s.
When free love
and all of that, yeah.
Okay.
And as of today, it has sold more than 10 million copies worldwide.
Wow.
Yeah. It has never been out of print. And there is an animated film version of this story that came out like a year or two ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Gibran was greatly inspired by his religious beliefs, and this has been a major part of his birth, or of his life since birth. Mm-hmm. With religion so deeply ingrained within him, it definitely comes through in his writing. I think the key to the prophet resonating with so many people from around the globe and through the decades is that his core beliefs have always been very fluid. So starting in about 1912, Gibran formed a really strong connection with the Baha'i faith. Mm-hmm. And this is a belief system that's similar to other major monotheistic faiths. So that means there is one all-powerful God. Mm-hmm. However, it actually teaches through the many manifestations of God. So Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, it doesn't really limit itself to one of them.
So it's saying that there is
a God.
There is a God, but it manifests through prophets.
Not even
in a way. Because Buddha and Jesus and Muhammad are all prophets.
They're all prophets, but it's all very personalized. Yeah. So you can see whatever you want to see with this religion, but it's still spiritual.
Yeah.
Followers believe this religion to be unified in fundamentals and varied in social practice / interpretations. And the ultimate goal would be a world where prosperity is ensured to all. So it doesn't matter what your class, nation, or race is. Yeah. Honestly, I feel this.
Yeah.
I mean, if I were to say, like, I'm going to do a religion. I'm going to do a religion.
Have you ever done a religion?
Bro. This one sounds the best just because it's so inclusive and it would solve so many problems of, hey, mine's better than yours, you know?
Yeah.
So I can absolutely respect this. Something that he wrote is this quote that I thought was that really explained a lot is you are my brother and I love you. I love you when you prostrate yourself in your mosque and kneel in your church and pray in your synagogue. You and I are sons of the one faith, the Spirit.
Wow.
I mean, all of these religions are so similar and they come from almost exactly the same place. It's just the stories are a little different.
Yeah.
You know? We're all humans and people really just need to get over themselves. I digress.
Like I said, we're complicated.
But in researching all of this, the thing that I found the most interesting about the prophet was the way that people react to reading it. Mm-hmm. So, it remains, just about everyone who reads it, it remains highly regarded by what seems to be the majority of people who have read it. Gibran's timeless and interpretive writing style, I think, truly affects people. And in fact, I found multiple instances, including your grandpa now, of where people who once having read the prophet will carry a copy with them always, either for themselves or to gift for others. And we have Rupi, who is sick, and there was another person who I thought was really cool that did this. And that's Elvis Presley.
Also, when you said sick, like it sounded like you were saying she was sick. So maybe you should clarify that she's
her religion.
There you go.
Sick.
Okay.
And then blah blah blah. Elvis Presley, and he was Pentecostal or he was part of the Assemblies of God Church, which I'm pretty sure is Baptist.
I
think it's Baptist.
I have no idea. He was from Mississippi, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, his family, like his uncle, I believe, was a Pentecostal preacher until he was 100 years old or something crazy. So he grew up Pentecostal, and then I believe by the time he was older, he was into the Assemblies of God. Anyway, he was an avid reader of religious and spiritual texts, and just about everyone knew this about him. Friends and acquaintances were very frequently gifted a copy from his personal Gibran stash that he kept specifically to give away. And while I was looking into this, I even found one of these stashed books on Graceland's website that had just been auctioned off last January. Yeah, I think it sold for like $500. But even neater is that I was actually able to read some scans of Elvis's personal notes and reactions to the opening poem from the Prophet entitled On Love. So all things considered, I really wanted to include this to be covered in the episode so that I can go over his notes with you guys, because I just thought
cool.
You get to see someone as famous as Elvis, his personal reactions to a poem. All right, and now since the last set of poems that we did, I've put a lot of thought into my approach of reading and analyzing poetry. I am still not very well versed in the technical aspects as I could be, but I'm going to try to give it my best in-depth analysis.
Go for it.
Thanks, Tori. I need your support.
Okay.
I'm not going to pretend that I know what I'm doing, but the entire point of this podcast is for me to challenge myself, right? So here goes. Before getting into the individual poems that I picked, though, I do want to talk a little bit more about the overall work, because, like I said, it is a collection of poems. If you were to read The Prophet yourself, I think you'd understand what I mean when I describe it as almost scripture-like. Now, besides the fact that the book is often regarded as a, air quote, holy text, and that's just an opinion, but I feel like people hold it to that standard.
I mean, people carry around Bibles.
Exactly. Like, that's kind of how, in my mind, I'm comparing this, is it feels like someone carrying around a Bible.
Yeah.
There is no specific form that I could really pick up on, but there are definite stanzas or verses, if we're going along with the biblical comparison, that carry each poem's message along, although generally I did notice that each line ends with a critical word for the poem, and I'll give some examples of that whenever I go through the two.
Maybe it's like a treasure hunt. They all end up.
It kind of felt like that. Like, you'll see.
National treasure.
So the story is framed around the metaphorical journey of the Prophet Al-Mustafa, who is another key aspect found in religious texts. And he's on the way to board a ship home after a long time abroad, which I kind of took that in a way of, like, almost, he's on his way home as in, like, dead. After his work in the world, he's going home. Like he's going home.
Baba's going home, honey.
Yeah. She's going to the farm.
She's going home. Okay, I see what you mean.
So, I don't know, but
maybe, yeah.
It's one way to interpret it. However, he is stopped by a group of people before he can get on the boat, with whom he discusses life and the human condition.
Wow. Hey, do you have time to talk about it?
Did we talk about this? No, but remember, he is this, like, renowned prophet. Everyone knows him. Everyone wants a piece of him, and he's about to leave, so they just want to squeeze in for all.
Oh, well, that makes sense then. If he is gonna die, if he's going home.
I'm just saying.
Why we like this, man? Can you tell us before you go away? Now that you say that, now I'm gonna be like, yeah. I can see that.
Yeah. Through the course of the book, we read through the insight of the prophet on practically every subject one could possibly seek guidance on. So there are physical needs, such as eating, buying and selling, working and giving. Spiritual needs, like religion, praying, freedom, and death. Societal needs, crime and punishment, teaching, marriage, and friendship, as well as more abstract concepts such as joy, sorrow, passion, pain, and pleasure. Wow. Yes. Like, when I say there is some, like, if you have a question about life, there is an answer for you in the prophet. Each of these topics are given their own focus chapter / poem, and they read comprehensively, so they work their way up into the higher concepts, so you're not immediately thrown into his opinions on religion and death.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it kind of builds.
Yeah.
So, like, if I'm remembering this right, the first poem is love, and then it kind of goes through, like, marriage and eating and selling and, like, all of that stuff. Then it moves kind of into crime and punishment and those more cultural things. And then you get into passion and joy. And then by the end, you're getting into beauty, religion, and death. So there's an arc.
Imagine being that smart.
He's enlightened.
Yeah.
Each poem will have you really stopping to reflect on things. Gibran successfully uses metaphors to take on this universal. Gibran successfully uses metaphors to take on universal human experiences in a way that makes it all so tangible. He is not too preachy, despite the fact that the voice of this book is a literal prophet.
Yeah.
He references God multiple times throughout, but he always focuses more on the individual relationship with God than thou must worship.
Yeah.
So he really lets the reader interpret it as they will. And I think that that's why everyone who reads the prophet is going to get something different out of it.
Now I need to read it.
It's really good. So like I said, the first poem in the prophet is called On Love. And just like a note, whenever I first was looking through the poems and deciding which one I wanted to do, I read the title as On Self-Love, whereas in this copy, it's just On Love. However, when you read it, it sounds... You can definitely interpret it as self-love. And this is... Yeah. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So love is personified as someone who has the potential and probability to hurt you deeply, but it will also be the one who opens you up to the deepest joys. So they are someone that will... I'll just read you the whole little line because it doesn't make sense taken out of context.
That's the thing about poetry.
Yeah. For even as love crowns you, so shall he crucify you. Even as he is for your growth, so is he for your pruning. Even as he ascends to your height and caresses your tenderest branches that quiver in the sun, so shall he descend to your roots and shake them in their clinging to the earth. Like, boom, right?
Yeah. And it's so simple the way he puts it, but it's not simple at all.
That's what I loved so much about reading these, is you can follow it so easily. You understand what he's saying, but his metaphors are good.
Yeah.
And I'm going to cover a couple more of them because you can't just take little bits of this. So love is really painted as an unpredictable force of nature or even the universe. And it really sticks out in this poem. This is a lot different than like all the romantic poems of longing that I've read in the past. And I know that they referred to him as the romantic of Lebanon, but I think that their romantic period must have been very different from English or German, because it's not anything like either of those.
Yeah.
And I think that the saying, it's better to have loved and have lost than to have never loved at all, can be applied really well to this poem. And
maybe it came from this.
I wouldn't doubt that.
Yeah.
Even though I think that that's like a really, really, really old saying.
Yeah.
Who knows? In one of the ending stanzas, he suggests that if you aren't ready to give it your all, being love, if you only seek out the pleasurable side of love, to just really not involve yourself until you are really ready, because that's the only way you're going to get the most out of it. Love, as the opening poem, really sets the reader up for the spiritual journey ahead, and that's how I think that this work was always meant to be read, is as a personal spiritual journey.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, you know, the first one is on love, but the way that it's the spiritual journey.
Yes.
Rupees, in a way, is like the end of it. This poem.
Like after you have gone through the journey.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's kind of what I was wanting to burst in and say whenever we first read the Rupi thing. Okay. But I wanted it to come a little bit better. Okay. But exactly. Like, she is someone who has gone through the journey and is on the side of enlightenment now and wants to help other people get there. But the way that she writes, I think, is a little bit more relevant to young people who might not be like Ruby or other literary people. Yeah. Where they're gonna respond more to her bluntness instead of his wordiness. Yeah. Even though his words are great. Yeah. But, I mean, really, in life, growth is going to come from the hard stuff. So, if you're never really challenged, you're never going to change. Or you have to be willing to remain open and to take the fear and roll with it. Otherwise, I mean, like he says, come back later. Yeah. The first opening lines of On Love is, when love beckons to you, follow him. Though his ways are hard and steep, and when his wings enfold, you yield to him, though the sword hidden among his pinions may wound you. And when he speaks to you, believe in him, though his voice may shatter your dreams, as the north wind lays waste in the garden. And pinions, it's the little outer feathers of a bird's wings, but it can also mean as a verb, so that's the noun, but as a verb it means to tie, cut, or hold the limbs or to prevent flight. So I thought that was really interesting that he, because
they use those to fly.
He uses them to fly.
But
as a verb, if you pinion something,
you're cutting off flight.
You prevent that. So I thought that was really cool, because the line again is, though the sword hidden among his pinions may wound you. So that double meaning.
Wow.
That was really tasty. And I wanted to go through some of, like, the last words of this poem. All of the last words of this poem are him, steep, him, you, him, dreams, garden, your, pruning, sun, earth, himself, naked, husks, whiteness, pliant, feast, that, heart, pleasure, floor, of, tears, itself, possessed, love, God, course, itself, desires, night, tenderness, love, joyfully, loving, ecstasy, gratitude, lips.
Those were the last one?
Those are the last words of every single line.
Oh. It sounded like a poem itself.
It sounds like a poem itself. It's very abstract. Yeah. But you get all those words. So you get
a
lot of you get a lot of him, you get a little bit of you. You get the sun and the earth, you get the nakedness, the husks.
Oh, that reminded me of what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Okay. Talking about Buddha, it's like yin and yang. You've got the opposites.
You've got the opposites, and that's in the next poem that I cover a real big part of that. But
well, because you can't have one without the other.
So. But whenever I was going through and trying to Nick Cage this to find the hidden meanings, I noticed that, and I mean, every single one of those words is relevant. It's all, each one, I think, like, if you were to just read those words, you would kind of get what the poem means. Yeah. And I really liked that. And you can even tell in some of the lines where he, had a line that's not really an entire sentence. So, this one line is pruning. Yeah. And your tears and all of these, negative, teeny tiny things. Very well done. And I wanted to also, like I said, go over Elvis's notes. So I have a little scan of a page, and the only part of this I could find is the last a couple of stanzas from this poem.
From On Love?
From On Love.
Okay.
And so I'll just read his part and then his notes. So, Love has no other desire but to fulfill itself. But if you love and must needs have desires, let these be your desires, to melt and be like a running brook that sings its melody to the night, to know the pain of too much tenderness, to be wounded by your own understanding of love, and to bleed willingly and joyfully, to wake at dawn with the winged heart and give thanks for another day of loving, to rest at the noon hour and meditate love's ecstasy, and to return home at evening tide with gratitude, and then to sleep with a prayer for the beloved on your heart and a song of praise on your lips. And he's underlined quite a few bits of this, but then he wrote it out like at the bottom. This is just a funny note, but the original poem spells fulfill, F-U-L-F-I-L. And down here he has F-U-L-L-F-I-L-L. So he's like,
oh, he's doing
no, it's spelled fulfill.
Oh, he's doing the asterisk thing that people do on Facebook.
Yeah, he's like being that guy.
Yeah.
But anyway, the part that he rewrote, it almost makes its own little poem. It says, love has no desire but to fulfill itself. Find love in yourself, and it will open your eyes to find it around you. So he rearranged part of these last couple of stanzas into his own little
now I need
poem.
I'm sure, like, some of the stuff seeped its way into his music.
Oh, absolutely. And this last line he has underlined, like, yes, where it says, heart and song of praise upon your lips. And I like to think he found that relevant because song, and he's like, and he used his music as a way of praise. Like, that was his spiritualness. Yeah. But yeah, I just thought that was so cool to get that little peek inside of Elvis's brain. And I wrote spell check.
That's funny.
But moving on to the second poem. This is one of the last poems in the book. It's called On Beauty. And it's actually the third from last. So it goes beauty, religion, death. And beauty is again personified in this poem.
A hunk of burning love.
Yes. Sorry. So beauty is again personified in this poem, and the prophet goes through different examples of beauty, or rather, how people perceive it. So we see, it's just sort of examples of, I'll just read them, that makes more sense that way. So, the aggrieved and injured will say beauty is kind and gentle. The passionate will say, nay, beauty is a thing of might and dread. The tired and weary will say, beauty is of soft whisperings, and she speaks in our spirit. But the restless will say, we have heard her shouting among the mountains. So he goes back and forth of all of these different people, and it is really the meat of the poem and what they think beauty is, which...
Beauty is in the eye
of the beholder, but he really goes further than that. So every one of these examples are going to coincide with something that the person does not have. So further down, we see, at night, the watchmen of the city say, beauty shall rise with the dawn from the east. At the noontide, the toilers and wayfarers say, we have seen her leaning over the earth from the windows of the sunset.
Okay, I see what he means.
Yes.
Okay.
And but despite all of this, the prophet says that beauty is not a need, but an ecstasy. It's not something physical at all. True beauty is found within the soul. So another little line says, yet in truth you spoke not of her, but of needs unsatisfied. And that's where I think that he thinks that people are missing out on beauty because they're getting it confused
with what they don't
have. So true beauty, like I said, is found within the soul. These people described throughout the poem are so constantly distracted by their desires and the value that they place within him that they're never satisfied. And again, we see that by the way that he pairs off his examples with the opposite perspectives. Let's see. So there is, towards the end, where he really gets into what beauty is. I feel like I keep trying to explain this stuff, but it just makes so much more sense when you read it. So I'm going to read it again, this little last bit. So, it is not a mouth thirsting, nor an empty hand stretched forth, but rather a heart inflamed and a soul enchanted. It is not the image you would see, nor the song you would hear, but rather an image you see though you close your eyes, and a song you hear though you shut your ears. So I made a little note of that beauty exists despite yourself. Yeah. So no matter what or who you are, beauty still exists. Mm. It is not the sap within the furrowed bark, nor the wing attached to its claw, but rather a garden forever in bloom and a flock of angels forever in flight. So there is no phases. There are no other perspectives. It just is. And he tells the people of Orphalese, which is the city, that beauty is life when life unveils her holy face. But you are life, and you are the veil. Beauty is eternity gazing at itself in a mirror, but you are eternity, and you are the mirror.
I need a pocket-sized Kahlil just to carry with me and personal motivator.
That would be the prophet. You get to keep it and carry it with you, just like everyone else. And then there were a lot of other things that I underlined that really just shows the oppositions of all of these people and their situations, with the night watchmen, where they see the beauty in the dawn, they see, relaxation and something that they just can't have.
Yeah. It's like that song, only miss the sun when it, what is it?
Yeah.
Only miss the light when it's getting cold. Only miss the sun. Right? When it starts to snow.
Yeah.
Only know you love her when you let her go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Grass is always greener. There are so many cliche statements that describe this feeling that I think that he really dug deep into that introspection to find a way to describe it. Interpretive stuff to say about it. Yeah.
So we've spoken about love.
Lots of love.
Lots of love.
And I did try to keep the topics of the 2 poems that I picked because, like I said, there's a poem on everything in this book. I wanted it to be 2 things that were a little bit more relatable to people, even though the entire thing is on the human condition.
I think it's interesting because Rupi, she's writing a human condition as well, but it's more modern.
Again, it's more modern, yeah.
But you can see where she pulls her as you're reading, you can see where she pulls her influence from. Oh, yeah. And the fact that people carry around the prophet.
It just says so much.
Yeah.
It really does. And, honestly, reading it was an experience. Because, again, whenever I first sat down to read the prophet, I kind of didn't want to. Because it was poetry. But also because just me as my personality, there's something in me that's wanting to always fight religion. And again, nothing against any of it, but I had this precognition or
I had this word that she already had a thought about religion in her mind that it was kind of hard to jog herself out of it.
Okay. It might be precognition. It was
I don't know.
Before going into it, I had these, thoughts and opinions before I ever actually understood who Kahlil Gibran was, and B, what the prophet was truly about. But when you first start out reading on love, you really get it. Oh, I see what you're trying to say. And then you go further and read the context of who he is, what his message was, and it is just...
Love yourself, love each other, love God, if you do.
Yeah, I'd say so. But it really... I don't know, just read it. Read the books, you guys. If you still aren't reading the books, shame on you. You suck. We're reading the books. You can read them too.
Yeah.
This is a book club. You don't have to show up to it physically.
Yeah.
But you do.
That's the whole point.
The books.
Yes.
I promise you, it's fun. I mean, once you really get into the groove of things, you want to read more. I mean, I know I kind of touched on this the last time we recorded. I think it's all kind of blurring together. But it really rewires your mind. Mm-hmm. And I'm, finding myself wanting to read the books that we've chosen more than just, mindlessly scrolling on my phone, which is my personal goal. So I'm really happy personally that I am getting to that point. And I gotta say, we've got some really awesome books lined up.
Yes.
It's getting so good. Next week, we're going to be talking about 100,000 Kingdoms by N.K. Jemisin.
Oh my god.
It's so good. I can't wait to talk about it. I started writing the outline for it, and, time was lost.
Yeah.
I just started going into it.
It was definitely an incredible book. And it was also a first novel that she read. Yeah, it
was her first novel released, and, I'm going to get into my girl, N.K. Jemisin, when we get into the episode that you're going to listen to next week. If we post it next week.
It'll be posted.
It'll be posted. And y'all are all going to stan her, too, because she is a legend.
Yes. Speaking of legends, we are going to eventually upload a episode of Lord of the Rings. We're reading the first book.
So that's the Fellowship of the Ring.
We're reading the Fellowship of the Rings. And then we're going to do an update episode on that.
Kind of how we feel about the first book and touch on it a little bit.
Yes, and I've read the first book at least 2 times, so I'm going to have to read it again because I'm almost done with Lord of the Rings, but we decided to read it.
Yes.
So
now you have to start over. It.
Yeah, now I have to analyze it.
So that's going to be fun.
But stick around for Lord of the Rings. 100,000 Kingdoms is next week, and then we'll announce the books for the March, which are also going to be really cool.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. In the meantime...
No, they're going to be for February.
This is February. Oh, whoa. For February.
We'll probably upload those pretty quickly.
Yeah, we're going to try to get back on track because we need to get some stability and schedule in our life.
Yes.
So February, forget what I said about March. We're doing February, and that's all about love.
I mean, we're going to read Awakening by Rebel Miller.
Yeah.
And then Tanabata Wish.
Tanabata Wish.
Yes. To focus on kind of like the Lunar New Year type situation.
It's a love story.
Yeah, it's a love story. Yeah, February, yeah. Awakening's a sci-fi love erotica.
We did not realize it was erotica when we picked it. We were just looking
But we're still going to barrel through it, so stay with us.
I bought it, so it's too late to go back now.
You can always catch us on our social media.
Yeah, we're on Instagram. Our handle is litchicks_chirp. Our email is litchickschirp@gmail.com.
Please send us criticisms, questions, comments, anything to our email.
What can we do to get you guys to read a book today?
Exactly.
What can we do for you? Gosh, it's getting too late. We're on Facebook, and that's where Tori posts all of the updates and whatnot, and that's just our podcast name, Lit Chicks and the Order of the Bookworms. And now we're on YouTube. So we've been posting stuff, our episodes on YouTube, as well as our regular iTunes. And so yeah, be sure to just keep tuning in. I think we're getting better, slowly but surely. We're figuring it out, getting more comfortable in the element.
Yeah, if y'all have any notes, just let us know.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, at this point, I feel like I can do anything because I did poetry.
Well, now we gotta tackle Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Woo! We end with this quote, and I feel like it's very representative of our podcast. Who said this?
I think it was Rupi.
Okay. Half of what I say is meaningless, but I say it so that the other half may reach you.
Which I think, that kind of fits in with you see what you want to see, but it's not. Yeah, I think it works.
That half and half. I mean, like I said, I think it works just because that's our podcast. Like we say all of this drivel so that like maybe every now and again we'll say something really significant. But for now.
All right, bookworms.
That's our chirp.